Hey y'all, I've got a kind of weird video. The title of it is going to be something like, Help, I checked out way too many books from the library. Uh, it's sort of a TBR slash haul, though they're not my books. Just a sort of chaos. I just have this huge stack of books from the library that I have menacing me at all times, and I just wanted to share them. Basically, what had happened is, I've gotten into BookTube in the last couple weeks, started the channel, but I had been watching BookTube for a little bit before that. Also, had been getting back into Goodreads and looking at looking at books I like, and then looking at related books to find recommendations and things like that, and finding recommendations through BookTube, and looking at, stuff that's won awards in the last few years, and started putting library holds on stuff that was short, like under 300 pages. A little feverish in my holding, and not a lot of foresight. I have accumulated way too many books from the library. I've been burning through them pretty fast. I've been stacking them in order from shortest to longest so that I can go through as many as quickly as I possibly can, saving the longer ones for later. But it has not made much of a difference. I still have this imposing stack, and I just went to pick up what I thought was going to be 6 more, and then it ended up being 11. Some more had come in this morning, and it's just wild. So, all of these are TBRs that I have every intention of trying to read before I return them. We'll see how that goes. I've been alternating between reading a book from the library and then reading a book that I own, and that's been going pretty well. Right now I'm reading Stoner by John Williams, which is a book I own. So after that I'll be going to a library book. So let's go through these. First, I realized somewhat recently that I hadn't read any poetry since I graduated from college in 2015, and I was like, I should remedy that. Poetry is I have a complex relationship. I find that 90%, 80% of poetry that I read I don't like. I find it to be largely unmoving to me. I'm not the kind of person who can subsist solely off of the language. Like, if it's a really sophisticatedly written poem about the beauty of a tree, that doesn't interest me. The poetry that I'm interested in is often more confessional poetry about, human struggle and things like that. But I do read a lot of poetry of all kinds. Pretty much, if people like it, I'll give it a shot. I have a very low success rate in finding stuff that I like. But, so I put holds on a bunch of different poetry collections from the last 5 years or so. And I know nothing about them, and I know nothing about the poets. But here are the ones that I have gotten. First, we've got a treatise on stars by Mei-Mei Berssenbrugge. Then we've got Eye Level by Jenny Xie. I'm guessing that's how it's pronounced. Next, this one I think was a finalist or the winner for the NBA. It's from Grey Wolf, Postcolonial Love Poem by Natalie Diaz. I do know who this person is because she's the poet laureate. An American Sunrise by Joy Harjo. Next, we've got The Kingdom of Ordinary Time by Marie Howe. Some sick glare on that. There we go. Then American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin by Terrence Hayes. This sounds like it could be up my alley. I like the... It's interesting. I was about to say it's like a concept album. It's a concept collection about assassinations. Interesting. And then finally, for poetry, This is someone who I do know who they are and know about them and have read them before. We got the collected and Sexton. I don't foresee myself reading this whole book, but I read some Anne Sexton when I was in college in poetry workshop, and liked her a lot, and was just sort of like, I should read more, so I figured I'll just try and read as much of this as I can. I'm going to put it probably at the bottom of the stack, though, just not in a hurry to get to it. Then, breaking my rule of reading the shortest things first, the next thing I'm going to read after I finish Stoner is Serotonin by Michele Houellebecq. This I found out about because of Clifford Sargent from Better Than Food. This was his best book of the year for 2020, I'm pretty sure. It sounds so right up my alley, and yeah, I'm excited to read it. So I'm going to read that before I read any of these other books. Next, we've got Mira by Jac Jemc. Jac Jemc's a playwright. It is a coming-of-age story for people who hate coming-of-age stories, according to the back of the book. That's me, kind of. I hate is a strong word. I don't generally vibe with teen fiction. I do like coming-of-age stories that are sort of like written for an adult audience, something like Skippy Dies or The Instructions. So, hopefully I like that. Next, we've got Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. It's hard to read this with the library shit all over the front of it. Don't remember what this is about. A young woman named Amanda lies dying in a rural hospital. A boy sits beside her, blah, blah, blah. They tell a haunting story of broken souls, toxins, looming environmental and spiritual catastrophes, and the ties that bind parent to child. Sounds kind of white noisy. These are short books. These are like this Fever Dream is 180 pages, I can burn through it in a day. Next we've got Coast of Chicago, which is a story collection from Stuart Dybeck. I have never read any Stuart Dybeck before. This is not a recent book. This is from 1990. Stories going back to 1981, it looks like. So this is something that I probably should have read when I was in college, but I didn't. Another one that's not recent, Bartleby and Company by Enrique Vila-Matas. This is a sort of weird... So it says it's addressing such artists of refusal as Robert Walser, Robert Musil, Arthur Rimbaud, Marcel Duchamp, Herman Melville, and J.D. Salinger. Bartleby and Company could be described as a sort of meditation or an homage to the writers of the No. Sounds interesting. Book about writing, novel about novels. Always into that. Next is another story collection. This one I think is pretty recent. 2016. You Are Having a Good Time by Amy Barrodale. I love stories, short stories. Yeah. This is one that's been on my TBR and Goodreads for like 10 years. And I've never had seen it in physical form. But then was burning through short books on my TBR, putting them on hold, and the library had this, and so I checked it out. The Contortionist Handbook by Craig Clevenger. This is I don't know what this is about. I believe that this is sort of experimental, if I remember right. Weird. This is from 2002. So, yeah, novel. Next, we've got a book that I saw. I was at Subtext, which is a bookstore in downtown St. Paul. This would have been in like December of 2019. I was there to buy a copy of Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James, which I still have not read. But this book was faced out and employee recommended, and it jumped out at me, and I put it in my TBR. Sea Monster by Chloe Regis. I don't know what it's about. It's got a quote from Paul Auster on the back of it, though, and Tom McCarthy. So that's pretty cool. Pulsing to the soundtrack of Joy Division, Nick Cave and Susie and the Banshees, an intoxicating portrait of Mexico in the late 1980s. Sounds good to me. Next, we've got The Muse Asylum by David Chukluski. I believe this is a book that gets sort of brought up when experimental fiction is brought up. 3 recent college graduates become entangled by romantic and literary obsessions in their search to uncover the identity of the great American writer Horace Jacob Little. Again, books about books. I'm a sucker for books about books. Next, we've got maybe kind of a wild card on this list. Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory, which is a story collection by Raphael Bob-Waksberg, who is best known as the creator and head writer of BoJack Horseman, which is a television show that I enjoy particularly. I've heard not great things about this collection, but my love of BoJack is strong enough that I was willing to give it a shot, and it's stories. So if I read 2 stories and it sucks, I have no problem DNFing this and returning it to the library. Next, we've got Darkness at Noon by Arthur Koestler. It is something like 1984, an Animal Farm, powerful work of 20th century literature that explores the moral danger inherent in a system that is willing to enforce its beliefs by any means necessary. Never read anything by Arthur Koestler before. So yeah. Next is The Grip of It by Jac Jemc, I believe is probably how you say that name. She is a Nordic person of some persuasion. This book came out in 2017. It is a sort of literary horror book. It's got quotes on the back from Jeff Vandermeer, Amelia Gray, and Dan Chown. And it's was published under the FSG Originals series, which is they put out like sort of more experimental weird books in paperback. They don't put them out in hardcover; they just go straight to paperback, which is a cool series. And this is some sort of horror. I've had this on my TBR since it came out, so hopefully I get to it. Next, one that I am really looking forward to, though it's at the bottom of the stack because it's pretty long. It's almost 300 pages. Trump Sky Alpha by Mark Doughton. Mark Doughton is a cat who's from the cities originally. This is his second novel. His first novel, The Infernals, came out in 2015, and in 2015, the AWP conference happened to be held in Minneapolis, and I had, in the previous summer, been a student worker for the low residency MFA program at my college, Augsburg University now. And basically, I was a gopher for the program and helped set up the microphones and stuff for the guest speakers and got people coffee and stuff. And in exchange, I was able to sit in on the workshops for free. And Then when AWP happened, they gave me a free pass to go, and I just had to table for the grad program for an hour and answer questions and hand out pamphlets and stuff, and I got to go to the whole conference for free. Anyways, long story short, there was a Grey Wolf panel where they had authors who are published by Grey Wolf. Grey Wolf is a fantastic independent press from Minneapolis that puts out amazing stuff. And so I went to the Grey Wolf Press, and Mark Doughton was there, and he read an excerpt from The Infernals that just blew my mind. It's about a guy. It's a chapter. The book, The Infernals, I just read pretty recently. Finally, I'd owned it since this incident where I saw him speak 6 years ago. But the chapter was about a man who is looking up restaurant reservations with his wife, and Google autofills gay rape into his, which is not a funny thing, but it's very ridiculous the way that it's pointed out. And then in response to this, he begins vomiting maggots out of his mouth and just like pouring out of his mouth. And he read that. That was the excerpt that he chose to read, and I was like, I'm down with this book. So this book is the follow-up. As you might have guessed, it's about Trump. 1 year after the president has plunged the world into nuclear war, a journalist takes refuge in the Twin Cities Metro Containment Zone. On assignment, she documents internet humor at the end of the world, hoping along the way to find the final resting place of her wife and daughter. I mean, if the Infernals was a novel, but it was very fractured and weird and very experimental. So I'm not expecting this to be straightforward by any stretch of the imagination. However, the concept sounds, I at first I saw that this was what it was called, and I was like, oh, because like who wants to read a book about Donald Trump, really? Even fictional Donald Trump. But the concept, it did sound interesting. Also, I'm always a sucker for anything that's going to take place in the Twin Cities, because that's where I'm from. So, hoping I get to it. Next, we've got The Torture Garden by Mirbeau. This is a old book. This copy of this book is from 1931. Looks like it probably came from the stacks from the Central Library. If I had to guess, Octave Mirbeau. Translated from the French. This is a weird book. The great album by John Zorn's Naked City, the experimental jazz outfit from the late 80s, early 90s, named an album after this book. Yeah. And then finally, we've got another book that breaks my 300-page limit rule, but it comes off of a review. I got it based off of a review, again, by Clifford Sargent from Better Than Food. It sounded absolutely up my alley, and it's a story collection, so I'm a little more forgiving of it being longer. It's Thus Were Their Faces by Silvina Ocampo. This is from NYRB. It's like not a collected complete stories, but it's like stories from throughout her life and career. It's like it spans from like 1937 to 1988. It says, and this collection was published in 2015. It's got a preface by Jorge Luis Borges. They were tight, and if it's got the Borges stamp of approval, like who am I to turn my nose up at that? So yeah, holy shit, this video is long. That is the giant stack of shit that I've got from the library. Am I going to get to it all? Probably not. If there's any of these that you've read that you're like, oh, that one needs to get read, let me know, and I'll bump it up to higher in the pile so I get to it sooner. For now, I'm just going to try and burn through as many of these as quickly as I can. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.